Marie, break the ice, asking you to comment on the other side of the problem, which is overweight. And obviously, nutrition-sensitive agriculture particularly is relevant. I know of the complexity of it, but I wonder whether you can comment about the short chain versus the long chain, because of course this analysis will be particularly focusing on the short chain. So is there any evidence, any or at least strategy of looking at this type of issue in the future?
Yeah, I think obviously the starting point is that whatever we do during the 1,000 days to protect mothers and children will have positive impacts on NCDs and obesity and overweight. We really haven't looked at the long chain, as you're mentioning, the whole food system. You all probably have seen the FAO document that came out yesterday, and that really is a very nice complement to this review because it does address the long chain, the whole food system, and how we can make the food system more nutrition sensitive. But you will notice also that it's highly conceptual, it's highly descriptive of how the food system may be able to improve nutrition, but there really isn't evidence yet, and it's very hard to analyze such long chains. It's not about just doing randomized controlled trial as we see in one of the comments in the series. But what are the ways that we have to analyze the impact of policies, of trade policies and food price policies on both on undernutrition and on overnutrition? So we do have to think very carefully about how to document better what is the impact of those policies, and they don't come alone, and so that also makes it very difficult to look at.
Joanne Katz from Johns Hopkins. When you were looking at the literature on schools and schooling for maternal influence in the child health, did you come across anything about adult education for women and sort of what role that might play compared with sort of schooling that happens at a different time in someone's life and may have a different impact?
Yeah, it's a good point. And also it comes to the question of, can we compensate for lack of education by doing better behavior change communication?
Doing something that doesn't have such a long term.
Yeah, and interestingly, I did work on that for my PhD thesis 25, 30 years ago, I don't know. And it is a partial substitute. There's nothing that, there's not just one pathway by which education affects nutrition, obviously. It's not just the knowledge pathway, it's the empowerment pathway. It's the being open to modern medicine or to learning as an adult, continuing to learn. So to answer your question, though, we didn't look at this in particular in this context. We thought the school was a little bit of an aside, actually, and just wanted to emphasize that we could do better. But that's how much can the adult education compensate? We haven't looked at it, but it's an interesting question.
There's a question here. Laura Goslow, the European Commission Nutrition Advisory Service. I was just intrigued by the earlier analysis on nutrition-specific interventions and the synergies that came out there in terms of impact, at least on mortality and stunting. And I realise what the deficit is here in terms of strong evidence. But do you have a gut feeling as to whether, particularly looking at agriculture, whether you would expect synergies across different types of agricultural interventions? So spanning biofortification with home gardening, say, or increased access to marketing and added value of produce.
Yes.
Do you have a comment there?
Well, I certainly. I mean, I have to say I continue to be baffled by the lack of evidence of impact, but again, for agriculture in particular, but again, it's not, we don't have evidence of no impact. We have a lack of evidence because of the bad evaluation. So we are in a very different place than we could be if we had really all of the information from good evaluation. answering that part of the question. But in terms of synergies, this is exactly why there is a perception that these programs can help exploit these synergies, even combining agriculture with social protection. There are some interventions in the production safety nets in Ethiopia, for example, that are doing exactly that. They provide some safety net and agriculture intervention, which makes the agriculture intervention or the farmers more able to take risk because they have another source of income, which is the transfer. So there are lots of synergies that we can imagine in all of these programs, and also between the nutrition sensitive and nutrition specific. What we haven't talked about much, and it has been mentioned in the previous session, was about the whole issue of infections and enteropathy, which we are starting to believe is probably very much at the heart of the lack of impact on nutrition, on stunting anyway. We seem to be at a point where we really don't know what to do to improve stunting. And all of those beautiful things have very minimal impact. So I think the next generation of research has to, and there is ongoing research, has to really clarify what's going on with the infection. How much do infections and subclinical infections, non-detected, prevent children from growing adequately? And there are countries like this extreme Guatemala case where my theory is aflatoxin, because in Guatemala all they eat is maize, and it's in the mountains, it's humid, that maize is likely contaminated. So I think we have to do a lot more in terms of exploiting the synergies with water sanitation and cleaning up the environment.
Okay, I think we have Zulfi, David, Lawrence, and then we'll see where the time takes us, and we'll see how many more.
So Marie, on the school programs, typically the outcome that's being seen is developmental outcomes or education treatments and things like that. What we've been very interested in looking at is the impact not just on developmental trajectory, but also on nutrition, in particularly primary schools. So we've just published with Lawrence in the IDS Bulletin an evaluation of the school nutrition program in Pakistan, which actually broke several myths. One, it was able to demonstrate developmental outcomes in girls beyond 5 years of age, but also nutritional benefits. So I was stunned to see stunting impacts from that intervention that did not seem plausible. So I just wonder.
Did you look at height per age Z-scores or deficit? Because if you looked at Z-scores, we'll have to talk.
Yeah, well, we looked at the entire range, and we also looked at weight gain. So there's no question that these girls, probably from food insecure environments, had nutritional benefits and also educational benefits. So I'm asking you this specifically because we need to come up with a unifying framework of the first 1,000 days with the first 5,000 days perhaps, or whatever. But something that integrates the early child development agenda, school nutrition, and the early infant nutrition agenda.
And then the adolescent girls and all that, the life cycle. Agree. The 1,000 days in many ways was a dream come true, because certainly for me anyway, I lived in Guatemala at the time when we were coming out with all the results and worked on the Oriente study in Guatemala, and it was so clear that after 3 years, those kids didn't benefit anymore. This is Guatemala, and you will never make me believe that kids after 3 years of age benefit from nutrition interventions. So it is wonderful that the nutrition community finally said, we cannot miss that opportunity. And I hope we stay there. The 1,000 days is so powerful, everybody uses it, and this is an opportunity we cannot miss. But yes, it has meant in many people's lives that, then we stop worrying about the kids after 2 years of age. And this is also why I'm saying we need to link up more with early child development, because they know that they can't stop after 1,000 days. And maybe we can tag along with them. They tag along with us for the first 1,000 days if we have better programs. We tag along for the preschool period. They have preschool programs. If we need to give children iron, if we need to do education about better diet, or improve their diet quality, they are going to preschool, and we can benefit from the synergies during the preschool years. What is missing in schools is plain nutrition education or good nutrition education, and there is a review actually of, is it preschool or school programs to prevent overweight and obesity in developing countries, showing that it works. And so, interesting that this has happened, but we have never done really the education in terms in terms of preventing undernutrition or addressing undernutrition. It's been done in terms of preventing obesity. So I do think we need to continue to bring in the issue of the life cycle, because basically what you said is we need the 1,000 days, we need the preschool years, we need the school years, and we need the girls and adolescents, and so we agree, but we also don't want to lose the momentum on the 1,000 days. We don't want to confuse people.
Paul Amuna from the University of Greenwich. I also represent the Nutrition Society in the UK and the African Nutrition Society. Now, thank you very much for what I think is a very important particular area for us as we move forward. I just want to focus mainly on the issue of school and education. Over the last year or so, we've been busy looking at nutrition education in the African context. And we've been looking at training in nutrition education. And we find that even the universities, which actually train nutritionists, don't have nutrition education programs. That's the first thing. The second point is that when you break it down to the school level that you are talking about, there are school health and nutrition programs and things like that. And about 6 years ago, I was involved in a program in Ghana training health in school health coordinators. And we tried to incorporate nutrition into the training. And we found that they were lacking in terms of their basic knowledge of nutrition and things like that. What I'm trying to say, therefore, is this, that yes, all the evidence shows that when particularly mothers have some education, and as you have illustrated in some of your results, that the more education they have, the better in terms of childhood care and so on and so forth, and particularly in relation to nutrition and nutrition education. So I see there's a huge gap here, so that whereas we know that these things work, we need to think in terms of who is going to deliver it, how it's going to be delivered, and how we prepare those people for delivery. And so for me, going forward in terms of the integrated nature of what we've been talking about, I think that we need to think of that very seriously. It also has a knock-on effect on the issue of overweight and obesity and the chronic diseases that result from the same 1,000-day problems that we're dealing with, because we know the evidence is strong about the preconceptual and nutrition in pregnancy and the risk of adult disease.
Thank you. Couldn't have more supportive comment. I agree with everything you say. And one thing, we keep talking about women and empowering women and focusing on women, but if we reach schools, we get both. We get boys and girls who also, we now know that yes, we need to focus on women, but then we also need to reach fathers and men in the communities and all of that. So that's also a win-win situation in terms of targeting both, reaching both through schools. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. Thank you.